Amal Al-Zayedi is here from the Ottawa Hospital. She is a Manager of Client Services and Analytics, and she's going to talk to us about designing self-service data ecosystems for clinicians and researchers. So I'm very much looking forward to your talk because it's about data democratization, isn't it? Great. Take it away. Excuse me.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amal Al-Zayedi, again, and I work with the Ottawa Hospital. But I just wanted to say that I'm really happy that I got the chance to come here and talk with people that I haven't met before, learned a lot about our shared challenges and opportunities that we have. I'm definitely going to be taking back some of this information back to my team and generating those conversations to improve what we have already. And I hope I can do that the same for you today with my talk. So what I wanted to share with you today is about the TOH, like the Ottawa Hospital's journey to self-serve analytics and what we have today. It might work for you. You might be more advanced than us in that sense, and I would like to hear more from you on that if that's true. But yeah, I hope you can take value from this. I wanted to start with the learning health system. Can I have a show of hands of how many people have heard about this before? I'm sure we all, a lot of us have. Yes, you probably did, but you didn't know what the name of it was. But the idea here is the healthcare system itself is very complex, right? And the data that is housed, it's a lot and kind of hard to find and use. And usually the operations that we do happens in silos. So clinical care happens here, quality projects happen somewhere else, and then research happens somewhere else as well. So nobody is, most of the time, kind of connected that way. And what happens is your work is kind of siloed, and that ultimately slows us down from learning from the system that we have. The learning health system, the idea of is simply put, is that you should have the system kind of get smarter every time you have a patient interaction. So you have a patient interaction that should generate data and then knowledge, and that should be put back into the system, into the practice, and then the cycle kind of continues. And the idea is that everybody that's connected to that system, the ecosystem, kind of benefits from it. So that is the patient themselves, the physicians, the providers, the staff within the hospital, everybody else kind of in your organization is benefiting from that, and you're contributing to that learning health system. I wanted to share the TOH kind of pillars or strategy. We have 4 of those, but it's kind of important to know where your team stands within your organizational strategy, is kind of knowing the why of what your team does. And for us, that's accelerating discovery from the, we might contribute to the other pillars, but mostly we're about data and generating value from that. Data democratization is something that we had put a lot of thought and effort into in the past few years, and mostly because we wanted to move away from data wrangling as an analytics team. It's no longer sustainable for your team to kind of keep up with the demand of the data and the analytics that is necessary there. So how do you kind of get away from that and start to focus on more important things and interesting things that you could do with data? One way that we kind of did that is through thinking about our access to the data that we have and the reporting that we do. So having a good data access strategy, no matter what the tool is that you're using or the level of data. And then our data literacy program that we really kind of beefed up over the years to help all our users understand and use the data that they have. So at the end of the day, it's kind of the why it's important. It's you're empowering your users, like your providers, researchers, everybody there, including your patients, to be confident in using that data and driving value from that and changing the way you work. You're hopefully inspiring innovation, so you have more access to the data. It just gets you thinking in different ways of how you can solve the problems that you have. And also speed. You hopefully you don't have to wait for a long time for an analyst to kind of pull the data for you and give you that file of whatever it is. We should help you understand what the data is and then have you kind of access that and use it for yourself. Just a little bit of context of how our team is kind of structured at TOH, and I understand that's different for other organizations, but it could be the same. Who we are, we're about 30 people, and we support kind of different areas. One of them is decision support, which is my team. We do a lot of consultations with our end users. We do a lot of operations research, QI kind of work. But what's more important is that we work with our BIDs, like data warehouse kind of team, to help build our data pipeline, which is that's the place we kind of invest a lot of our energy into, is having a good data warehouse with high quality data that can be used later on for any other self-serve tools. We also, again, like we do a lot of work with our data literacy program and then data governance, which is huge lately, right? So that's kind of, you manage the data that you have. Our goal is, of course, to enhance like patient care by using the data that we have, leveraging that, and of supporting quality in research and innovation. And our strategy is twofold. So everything that we do will have to fit into this. So you have to think, no matter how small your project is, it has to like be part of our data democratization strategy. So for improvement to accessibility and like faster time to insight. And then we always align our work and our effort with our organizational like goals. So department and organizational goals. And kind of how we work with other teams or departments or service lines, whatever you want to call them, we kind of put like a little bit of a framework around that. Each department or service line has their own needs, so we kind of tailor that way we work with them. But overall, it kind of looks like this. So you start at the bottom, we align our staff and support with the data champions from those teams. Kind of similar of what Osler kind of presented yesterday, having consults as your analysts as consultants. So we have our team again paired with the departments, and then from there we engage with them, right, with leadership. So part of the data champions could be your operational leads, physicians, anyone who's like really interested in data and trying to move that forward for their areas. So we engage with their leadership and we help them, they help us prioritize their work. Like what is important for them? What are the pain points now? And that's how we figure out what to work next for that area. And then beyond that, we're identifying the KPIs and the data needs that they have. We have to make sure it's important and it's aligned with the overall like organizational strategy. That's one good way of doing it is we could suggest like KPIs that we can use, but ultimately they're the ones kind of driving that. Once we have all of those kind of components, then we go out and build the tools and the whatever dashboards or like the self-serve tools there. But a lot of that work, again, is at your data warehouse kind of level to make sure that you have a great data pipeline and everything is kind of consolidated there. And it doesn't have to be like for one department. You have to think about how is that going to work across departments. For us, we have other hospitals as well, not just TOH on the same instance of Epic. So making sure that kind of works for the overall system. And then finally, what kind of brings all of that together is having a great like training program along with that and one-on-one support. So being available as analyst to your people that you work with to be able to answer questions in time and kind of take their suggestions back. So all of that, as you're kind of going up, you're hopefully driving more value from the data that you're supporting. Just a quick look at what the Ottawa Hospital's data sources are. Yours might look similar or a bit different, but basically we have Epic, which houses a lot of the EMR like data that we have. And then we have other sources that are outside of that, like patient experience, coded data, HR, finance. Most of this in the future, a lot of this now is, of course, in Epic, and we use Caboodle as our data warehouse. That's what the decisions that we made. And we're adding in the HR and the case costing all into that. I know some of you guys are using Fabric, but that's something that we're going to be moving into later. However, it's still not something that we're going to be copying our data into. Our strategy is still Caboodle first and Epic first, if that's possible. Otherwise, the data will flow into other tools like Power BI for reporting. How we kind of disseminate that information, we think a lot about the roles of the end users and what they would need for that, the reporting for that purpose. So for example, for executives and leaders, we think they usually kind of look at dashboards and KPIs trending over time, like high-level stuff, and we build that all in Epic or Power BI if that's necessary, if that's outside of it. If you think about staff and providers, usually they're kind of working with detailed lists, and that's where we work with workbench reporting templates and things like that to help them with that work. Or if you're talking about QI, research and innovation, then it's more of data exploration, right? Where you can access that data on your own, like research feasibility tests and things like that. You can do that hopefully through Slicer Dicer or Cosmos. Again, more of like hands-on things that you could do. And if all else fails, then you always have the traditional way of asking for data, and then that goes in the queue, but traditionally that is slower than just going and getting that data yourself. We do try to spend a lot of our time into, again, building that data warehouse that can support these in the future. How to engage with the analytics team? So we do offer services to anyone that's looking for data, right? Supporting patient care, like researchers, innovation, anything like that. We have a lot of data consultation services, right? And I'll show what the booking app looks like, which has been proven to be very successful, a data literacy program, and then again, ServiceNow forms for any kind of engagement with our team. It's always good because at the end of the day, you kind of want to go back to those service lines and say, this is the support that we provided for you. Having it all in one system kind of to track those tickets is ServiceNow for us, but it's a good way to kind of have these numbers at the end of the day to say how we supported you. Also, the major projects are prioritized and approved with collaboration, right, with our service lines, with our leadership, and Atlas Alliance-wide, if this is a solution that's supposed to serve more like multiple hospitals. That just gains a lot of visibility and transparency over the work that we're doing and how others can use that, right? This is an example of our data consultation application. So it's a 365 booking app, where just simply putting multiple sessions in there, and depending on what you need, you kind of click on that, you pick the analyst that you want to work with. It could be somebody that's within that service line, let's say ED, but it doesn't have to be. And yeah, it gets, like, the end user is the one who's booking it within your calendar. Takes a lot of work off of the analyst. The analysts were at first kind of apprehensive about this, what are the questions that people are going to ask? So it was kind of a bit scary, but we got over that. We're all comfortable kind of taking cold calls and taking on questions, answer what you can, or refer them to the support that they need. It's proving to be very successful. We get a lot of engagement, and the ratings are excellent. So every time somebody finishes a session, they get a survey of, rate our service. For our data literacy program, it is homegrown, so we as the analysts create the courses. that we give out, and we have, these are just a sample of them. We have a lot more, and they're usually in levels. So for example, Power BI, we have 101, 201, and then doing the 301 now in development. So the same thing for every tool that you have, like Slicer, Dicer, whatever else it is. We have different levels of it. So it's about like an hour or 2 hour kind of sessions where we go through these tools and live and go through like a demo of it, answer questions. So it's a great way of engagement. We got thousands of people kind of going into these and attending them. The rating is really high, and we've got a lot of events that kind of run every year. Like I remember when we first went live with Power BI and trying to get people to learn how to use it and understand it, we used to send them off to like Office 365 kind of documentation. That didn't really work. Same thing with Epic. You can send them to UserWeb where there's like hundreds of pages of things to learn. It's not a good way for people to understand how to use a tool. Instead, we decided to kind of do our own educational sessions, which have been a lot better. So we just continue to do that. We asked for feedback, and that's what people wanted, so we're going with it. This is just a kind of an example of how it's important to keep with the communication of the things, the products that you kind of put out, to always make sure that people know what it is, where does it exist, and always updating the kind of newsletter or like what's new, things like that about, let's say a metric has changed, what is the difference, what is the new definitions. So a good place to refer people. Same thing with our data hub. We have a user, like a website that's an internal for everyone to kind of, if you wanted to know anything about data or how to do a research request or a project, you kind of go there. It has like services about step-by-step on how to guidance, data tools, whatever it is, by area. So we started looking at, like for cancer, for example, that area, what are the metrics that you should be looking at? What are things that you should be aware about the data quality and things like that? So it's all there. And of course, the learning courses, how do you register? How do you watch old recordings? Things like that. Lessons learned. So governance, we talked about that this morning, is very important, especially around access and clarifying the roles, who should have access to what and when, how appropriate is that? That's really important, so kind of setting a strategy for that. And so every time you kind of create a new tool or have a request access for that, you know what the algorithm is, and you know how to escalate if you need to do that. Use your current reusable assets and documentation, curate it, so always consolidating what the metric definitions are. You don't want to have 10 metrics for the same thing. If different variations, we should all align on what length of stay, for example, is, or ALOS to ELOS, so that we all understand what it is when it is reported at a corporate or Atlas Alliance level. Invest in data literacy and training. So for us, that was important. That's what worked. It is a lot of work, but it also generates a lot of engagement from your analysts themselves, and a lot of reward. That is something that I see in our engagement survey that we do across. It's like, how am I attached to my work, or how does it benefit others? Doing a course like that, like coming up with the material and then delivering that course and then engaging with your service lines about that, it's really rewarding. Engagement and prioritization matters. So which projects do you handle first? We kind of offloaded that to the people that need it. You tell us what we should work on next. Start small and gradually expand. Yes, so when we first started for the data literacy program, for example, we didn't have all of the courses kind of made. We started with one, we got feedback, and we rolled on to the next. It's okay to do that. And it's a team effort. So, and it starts like at every single level. So if you get a data request, for example, you have to ask, do we have this already? Do people understand where it is? Do they have the right access? Do we need to change that? And everybody should be asking that question, from the analyst all the way to the director. We should be able to ask that and make sure that we're self-serve first. This is the last slide. So kind of getting started with self-serve tools, just wanted to give you kind of a few questions that you can ask yourself or your organization of how to get started, but you could be already on your way. One, know your users. So who needs the data that you need or the reports or whatever it is, the tool that you need, doesn't matter what it is. Why do they need it and when do they need it? We talked a lot about how do you kind of weave that into the workflows of people so they have it when they need it. That might be hard to achieve, but that's something that you can think about in the future. Leverage and consolidate the information that you have and make sure you have consensus about these things that you're putting out, right? It doesn't matter what the metric is, it has to be built properly in the database and it has to be QA'd and you know, stamped with that stamp of approval so everybody knows what to use and there's no question about it. Governance, especially about like having the right access and appropriate use cases for it. Again, having that algorithm, what does that look like for you, and who manages that, who makes the decisions, and how can you make changes later and escalate things. Provide guidance for us, again, is those training and those tip sheets that kind of go along with that, and a lot of communications of telling people where things are and reiterating that every time you get a request because you hope that next time they can just do it for themselves, and also giving that one-on-one support. Yes, you have a product and you kind of give a course on that, but people will still have questions once they go in and try to play around with the data, and they will call you for those answers, and they're grateful that they have you there to answer those questions. And then pilot and iterate. I didn't know pilot was a bad word, but I put it in there. But test and learn, and you know, try again. But yeah, start small and gather your feedback. Everything we do, we have like a survey after it, like to kind of rate our services and get feedback that way. And most people are appreciative, as you saw, and then expand from there. That's it. Thank you.
Questions? I have a question for you. So in data democratization, when using tools such as Slicer Dicer, for those of you who are not on Epic, Slicer Dicer is sort of a self-serve tool that comes with logging on to Epic, and you can kind of look at things. I was wondering if you had any insight about, we're starting to get questions online, insight about data quality and
Yes.
whether they're playing with messy data, and then what happens if they start to escalate from that.
Yeah, so Epic like rolls out a lot of new models all of the time, right? So for example, when we're talking about Slicer Dicer, there's like patient data model or ED data model or visits, right? So they're kind of specialized data sets. And because there's no way for our team to kind of go through that and do full validation, we kind of came up with levels of validation. To get things off, like just to deploy them, we do a level 1 validation, and that's just kind of looking at very sensitive fields. So if it has patient names, for example, or a postal code, do we need the full postal code? Can people filter on that, or can they just see it in a list? So those questions are kind of answered and kind of worked through, but very quickly. Something that we can do, we're not looking at every single field that's available in that data model. Some of them have more than 50, right? So there's no way we can QA all of that. But what we do is we kind of try to get it to production quickly, but as safely as possible, and then have the people who want to use that data model kind of validate it and come back and tell us what needs to happen and change. And then until we get to that data model for full validation, at least people are using it and they have good insight on what should be edited.
Great. We had a question there at the back.
Hi, Omar Dowdy from Green Shield, and question on the data modeling side of it. How deep do you go with data modeling? Do you kind of define like a high-level data model, or do you engage the business as well to help define it?
Like in terms of Caboodle, it's a star schema, so you have fact tables and dimensions. Dimensions, we try to have them standardized across Atlas Alliance, right? And then the fact tables are there. We have the like major standard ones, like I said, patients, ED, whatever cancer it is. Definitely, for example, cancer was the latest one that we did, and not deployed yet, but it's not an Epic kind of build, so we have to do that ourselves. And to do that, we had a lot of stakeholder engagement on, in terms of operations or research. What are the items that they're looking for to be in that data model so that it's useful for them at the end of the day? So a lot of engagement with the stakeholders, to be honest.
So we have a question online. Can you please share more insight into your experience with Cosmos? Because we know Ottawa was the first one to do that for us. Does it support patient-level data for research? And I have an additional question.
Yeah.
What would you do with the most responsible diagnosis that the doctors are not putting in for Cosmos?
Oh, okay. Well, let's answer one at a time.
Yes, let's do that one.
I did actually have a slide about Cosmos at the end, but I didn't think that people would care about that. So the insight experience with Cosmos. Cosmos is a kind of an international database. So every hospital that's on Epic has the option to opt in and kind of pull your data into this international database. It has millions of patients and billions of data points that you can use. So it's vast. Not everything that's collected in Epic flows into Cosmos. It's a kind of a limited data set. And the way you interact with it is through like an online portal, so it's separate than your hyperspace, and then there is a kind of a slicer-dicer version of it that you can play around with 1% of the data, so the, I guess, processing of that data can be like done faster, but you can also do it on the full population of Cosmos. The other way to interact with it is through a VM. And this is where you can become a data architect with some training and actually pull from that database through SQL. And that's where you can access the patient level data there for research projects. And you can also do your data science stuff and analysis there as well. But no data can be exported out. You can only export data artifacts, which are like, I don't know, graphs, tables, whatever, the insights that you kind of get from there.
The aggregated data.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's aggregated only, exactly.
So my question is, if we were to bucket patients in Cosmos, but the doctors are not putting in the diagnosis consistently in the right place, and we don't have WinRecs in
Right.
our Caboodle, well, we do, but we don't have access to the most responsible coded diagnosis. How do we contribute to Cosmos?
Yeah, so it's through that physician diagnoses, and just remember that Cosmos is like a lot of the mostly Epic hospitals, and those happen to be in the U.S. And the way they do their billing is different than us, so
They have to put in the diagnosis.
Exactly. So it's more complete for most of the patients that you're going to be looking at anyway. So yeah, Cosmos actually has a lot of really nice dashboards about data quality and completeness there, if you ever get the chance to do that. So Mustafa, you were talking about that, having a dashboard for it. Cosmos does it for you. It's really nice.
Sorry, a follow-up question on data democratization. I'm sure a lot of us would agree is a good thing, but one question I have is, how do you see handling sensitive data, let's say sprawl, with increased data democratization. Do you have some thoughts around that?
Of course, you can always follow your privacy and legal guidance, right? Whenever, there are research requests, for example, that are traditional, we know how to handle them, but if there's any questions around that or we're not unsure, we always go back to our privacy and legal for advice. Yeah, so just kind of rules that you set out for your own team on how to treat these, and just going forward, yeah. And we have an escalation process. That's it. Hope I answered that question.
Great stuff. I think it's very revolutionary for decision support team to be teachers and guides for the rest of the hospital. So congratulations.
Thank you.